Hi, everyone, and welcome to this very special Montclair Film Story Slam. I'm Sue Hollenberg, Education Director at Montclair Film. First and foremost, the bar is open, so please feel free to get concessions while I make announcements, or after the storytellers finish their stories while the judges are deliberating, the concession stand is open. And also, please note fire exits to your right and to your left. Bathrooms are over there to your left, in case anyone needs them. Before we start, I want to give a big shout out to our StorySLAM partners, the Montclair Center Business Improvement District. The Montclair BID is a nonprofit organization established to enhance and promote downtown Montclair as a regional shopping, dining, and entertainment destination. We are so thrilled to work alongside the BID for this program year-round and during our annual festival. Tonight's show is also co-presented by AAPI New Jersey. Their mission is to create a more inclusive community by uplifting the varied experiences of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders, advocating for AAPI rights and representation, and promoting awareness and education around AAPI culture and history. And tonight's slam is also co-presented by the Montclair Public Library and Montclair Reads, which includes over 40 events happening throughout town, inspired by the graphic novel, The Best We Could Do. Before we start, I also want to let you know about some really cool upcoming events. Tomorrow night, May 17th, we have the Montclair Improv Comedy here in Cinema 505. And a week from tonight, on May 23rd, we have a rare public screening of Who Killed Vincent Chin at the Claridge. The screening will be followed by a Q&A with civil rights icon and New Jersey native Helen Zia. This is presented in partnership with AAPI New Jersey. On May 30th, we are screening the Trail Running Film Festival in partnership with Fleet Feet. It's a collection of short films about the trail running community, sure to get you energized and motivated for your next run. And on June 27th through the 30th, please join us for our first summer showcase, featuring 24 festival-caliber films screening all weekend at the Claridge as part of Prudential Presents North to Shore Festival. You can find the full schedule on montclairfilm.org, or there's also brochures over there if anybody wants to check it out. And also, don't miss Paul Giamatti in conversation with Stephen Colbert on June 29th at NJPAC. And of course, don't forget to check out our exciting spring and summer classes for tweens, teens, and adults. There's so much more upcoming at the Claridge and Montclair Film. Please visit montclairfilm.org for information on all of our events and screenings, and sign up for our email list so that you're the first to know about all our events. And finally, we want to thank all of our members. If you aren't already signed up, please consider joining our family of more than 3,000 member households today. In addition to discounts and early access during the festival, membership benefits are available at the Claridge, as well as with our Montclair Film education programs. And now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to our host for the evening, Ryan Moore. Ryan is our education program manager and a filmmaking and screenwriting instructor here at Montclair Film. Ryan is also a screenwriting professor at Fairleigh Dickinson University. His own films have screened in festivals worldwide, and you can check out his debut feature film, Marijuana Minutes, on Amazon. Please welcome Ryan.
Awesome. Thank you, Sue. For those of you who have been here before, you know Duncan usually does this. So I have some really, really big shoes to fill. For those of you who don't know Duncan, he's very large. I'm honored to be your host for this evening's Immigration Stories Story Slam. I myself am not an immigrant, though my commute from Central to North Jersey may feel that way sometimes. Tonight's stories are deeper, though, than that notorious pork roll, Taylor ham divide. It's pork roll. Please hold your booze to the end. Tonight we will hear about the journeys of those who have left behind familiar shores of home, whether by choice or by circumstance. These stories are not merely accounts of physical relocation, but chronicles of transformation, adaptation, and the constant negotiation of identity in a world that is often quick to label. Our stories tonight run the gambit from lighthearted and funny to dramatic and serious, and we'll jump into them shortly. But before I introduce our judges and storytellers, let's do a quick show of hands. Who here is here for their first ever Montclair Film Story Slam? All right. Oh, a lot of newbies this time. Awesome. And who are our veteran, repeat offenders, diehard loyalists? Awesome. Welcome back. We are so lucky tonight to have 3 judges who are community members and industry professionals to help us with this friendly competition. As usual, our judges will help us award our favorite stories of the evening a first, second, and third place prize. Those prizes will be some fresh Montclair Film swag, and first prize will include a very coveted yearly membership. Ooh, ah. So let's meet the judges. First up, we have Kaylee Nardella. Kaylee is a filmmaking teacher from South Africa with a master's degree in film and television studies from the University of Johannesburg. She has always had a passion for filmmaking and teaching film. She was a lecturer at the University of Johannesburg for 4 years. She immigrated to the United States after meeting her now husband while au pairing for a family right here in Montclair. And she now works with us at Montclair Film as our education program coordinator, and she's been here for a while as a filmmaking and screenwriting instructor. Next up, Raul Barcelona, Dr. Raul Barcelona now, congrats, is an award-winning filmmaker, artist, photographer, and educator based out of the greater New York City area. His work has been exhibited in galleries and film festivals around the world, including Sundance and the Berlin International Film Festival, and has been shown on HBO, PBS, and Discovery Channel, amongst others. Born in Spain to Cuban exiles, Raul developed a strong desire to express himself artistically during his teenage years when his family first relocated from the Catalonia region of Spain to Italy and then later to Texas. Art making became a way to transcend both linguistic and cultural barriers. As an educator, Raul directs and develops filmmaking, digital and fine arts programs as enrichment and therapeutic outlets for adults with disabilities or on the autism spectrum. Our third and final judge, let's do a round of applause for Raul. I have it as an applause at the end, so. Amber Reed is our third and final judge. Amber is the president and co-executive director of AAPI New Jersey, a nonprofit advocacy organization established in 2021 that advocates the power of our state's 1.1 million Asian American and Pacific Islanders to advance social justice. As a secret playwright, Amber has been supported by the MacDowell Colony and the Soho Rep Writer-Director Lab, with her work popping up in such places as the Little Theater, the Prelude Festival, McSweeney's, and the Brooklyn Rail. She lives in Montclair with her husband and 2 children and thinks anyone who opened up a Korean barbecue place here would make a killing, so keep that in mind. A big round of applause for Amber and all our judges. Now that we know who's in charge here, because it's not me, let's go through the rules of engagement for tonight. Each story will be 6 minutes total. Sue here will give you a sign at the halfway point, which is the green card. At 5 minutes, so 1 minute remaining, you'll get the yellow card. And again, at 6 minutes, you'll get the red card. It doesn't have to be a full stop on your story. You can finish your story, of course. Just try to wrap things up when you see that red card. The only other rule is to be on theme. And we're very excited to be entertained by your stories. And we're excited for the comedy, the drama, and everything in between. This is a friendly competition. And after a short deliberation, the 3 judges will decide who wins first, second, and third prize. So again, tonight's theme for the Story Slam is immigration stories. We have incredible storytellers who have come to share, so let's dive in. First up, we have Heidi Wu.
My parents arrived in America with lofty dreams. Before settling down, they visited New York City, and as they wandered around Manhattan, Appa filled Amma's head with visions of grand wealth and success. Amma is a smart woman who boasts of her high IQ, soaked it all up eagerly. Being from a small town in Korea, she had limited knowledge of the world beyond her own. So when Appa pointed to the tallest skyscraper in Midtown and promised to buy it for her, she believed him wholeheartedly, not realizing it was the Empire State Building. She loved him. Yet Amma and Appa had different visions of their dream life in America. Appa dreamt of building a business empire, his name emblazoned across chains of stores. He had a bit of an ego, living in his own reality. But ironically, it was his delusions that led us here, so despite the chaos that comes with being his daughter, I'm still grateful. Amma, on the other hand, excuse me. Amma, on the other hand, had more modest dreams. She yearned for a home with a garden where she could grow Korean peppers and red lettuce to hike in the Catskills, and occasionally catch a Broadway show. She simply wanted her children to receive a good education and for our family to be safe and happy. However, as immigrants, their options were limited, and they ended up in Flatbush, one of the epicenters of the crack cocaine epidemic that ravaged Black communities in the 1980s. My parents planted the seeds of their American dream in turbulent soil, which unfortunately foreshadowed what was to come. Our story became a dysfunctional fairy tale. My sister and I were both born in Flatbush, and it was a violent place. I vividly remember the despair in the community, finding needles in playgrounds, drenched in the smell of urine, strangers shouting at each other in the streets, litter scattered all over Prospect Park. As a sensitive child, I was scared most of the time, and my parents, under tremendous stress, struggled to manage our family business, Wu's Market, and simply to survive. But amidst the turmoil, there were sweet moments for us kids. I remember playing in the grocery store, pulling plastic produce bags from their spools and letting them pile up on the ground, grazing my fingers along salt cod and sneaking licks. We played hide and seek in the room-sized refrigerator, taking turns hiding in giant watermelon bins. And inspired by the graffiti that covered all of New York City at the time, I practiced my art scribbling on the white walls of our apartment. Some days, Amma would scrub our bodies with a Korean scrubber, hoping to cleanse us of our mischief, but it never worked. Wu's Market eventually closed, and Amma found herself financing Appa's ventures repeatedly, taking part-time jobs and borrowing money. Appa opened a shoe store, a deli, another grocery store. There was even a time when Amway vitamins took over our kitchen. Each pursuit ended in failure, fueling a constant stream of arguments. Dinners where dishes would go flying off the table, kimchi splattered on the walls were not uncommon. And there were days when Appa would take his frustration out on my pet Pomeranian, hurtling books at him. After years of dysfunction, Alma finally took charge and opened up her own business in Midwood, a tailoring and dry cleaning store catering to the Orthodox Jewish community. For 30 years, she's been stitching seams into the heart of her customers, becoming a local celebrity, praised by Jewish mothers at synagogue. Looking back, I realized how pivotal Alma's store was for our family. Her decision to no longer let Appa's dreams disrupt our lives marked a turning point. Watching my mom be the strong one, the provider, helped me access my own inner strength, which would later save my life. Excuse me. It took an immense courage for Amma to break convention and dictate our family's future. The decision wasn't a cure-all for the years of trauma we endured, of course, but as adults, we're reconciling our childhood pain in our own ways. Our family story may have begun as a dysfunctional fairy tale, but it evolved into a hero's journey. And though Amma's dreams weren't fully realized, they continue to live on, She doesn't own a garden, but she has a small forest of houseplants growing in her living room. She's seen over a dozen Broadway shows, and my parents have 5 healthy grandchildren. Together, we've created a new narrative filled with joy, laughter, and resilience, honoring the sacrifices made and lessons learned along the way. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your story, Heidi. Our next storyteller is Françoise Moreau.
Okay, what kind of American are you? You don't know? Oh yes, I do know. I'm an American who believes in democracy, in equal rights, in social justice, in education. I've worked for more than 35 years in the US. I pay my taxes and I vote. I was called for jury duty 3 times. I spent most of my life in the US, 61.3% to be exact. When asked, where are you from? I like to say, from New Jersey. When prompted to justify my accent with, where are you really from? Or nicer, where were you born? I can give a short answer, France, or the longer one. I was born near the famous village of Chablis in Burgundy. Yes, I like wine and cheese, and yes, I stomped grapes as a child every year. I'm very close to my family, and I miss them every day. It was particularly hard and isolating to be so far away from them when my first American husband, and the reason I moved to this country, turned out to be abusive. I love France, and I love the US. In France, I will miss the US, and in the US, I miss France. I will always feel that I have a foot in each country, with my derrière dipping in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. In my early 20s, a friend and I came to New York. We hitchhiked to Montreal. My first husband picked us up. A year later, we were married, and I applied for a green card. For a few years, we split our time between France and the US. When I finished school, we decided to permanently move to the US. 1 week before returning to New Jersey, I learned that I had to reapply for my green card because I had overextended my stay outside the US. It would have taken me months to get it back. Fortunately, my husband was able to contact someone really helpful. I flew to New York with a sealed envelope containing my green card and an official letter for customs. Upon my arrival at JFK, I was taken to a special room to be interrogated. I felt treated like a criminal. I had not seen my husband in months, and I was afraid I wouldn't be let in. 2 customs officers kept asking me the same questions, made me feel small, like my life depended on them. They told me that they didn't have to let me in the country. That was up to them, no one else. Between questions, they were chatting about the barbecue parties they will go to later. Suddenly, without a word of explanation, they returned my green card. They were done playing games with me. I was allowed back into the US. It was July 4th, 1986. In the New York Harbor, big celebrations for Liberty Weekend were going on. The French and American presidents were there to celebrate a gift from the French. The Statue of Liberty was 100 years old and had just been restored. That evening, returning to New Jersey, the sky illuminated by fireworks welcomed me back. I felt very lucky. I knew that many migrants would have had a harder time re-entering the US. It was my choice to move here. I didn't leave my country because of hardship. I was not leaving my loved ones forever. I was white and married to a white American citizen with an accent, but from New Jersey. My foreign accent was French and still is. I applied for American citizenship. At first, my life in New Jersey was not easy. I had to communicate solely in English, and it took me a year to land a good job as a French teacher. Plane tickets were not cheap. The internet didn't exist. Phone calls were very expensive. Letters were the best way to communicate. I kept all of them. What has helped me the most was teaching French. Being a very French teacher allowed me to fully embrace my Frenchness. I often told my students that they didn't have to speak French perfectly to communicate well, that it was okay to make mistakes, to have an accent. My accent might have served me very well. I was often told, "Your French accent is so beautiful, don't lose it." A student's parent even told me once, "It's sexy." I've tried to improve my accent. I even considered taking an accent reduction class. Yes, there are such classes, but let's face it, I will never lose it. And do I really want to? To make my students feel better, I will tell them about the mistakes I've had made. I used to say, "My hairs are so dirty, I have to wash them." It's plural in French. This is one hair. I learned the hard way not to say, "I was so pissed off," when speaking to an elderly woman. To differentiate between long and short is still difficult. Feet and fit, feel and feel, sheet and, Once a student drew me on the board eating a croissant in the oven because I had just said, "I like to eat my croissant in the oven," when, of course, I meant to say, "I like to heat my croissant in the oven." So, after all these years, am I still more French? Am I more American? Or am I a hybrid because I was naturalized American? What kind of American am I? I was born in Burgundy, and I live in New Jersey. My name is Françoise. Thank you. Merci.
Thank you, Françoise. Up next, we have Yulia Parshina-Coates.
There was a church outside of the windows of my childhood apartment in Moscow. It was a beautiful red brick building with these golden onion domes. And I walked past it on my way to school every day, but I've never been inside because religion was taboo in the Soviet Union. And churches were, I was told, for silly old ladies and superstitious fools. Then one day, my parents sat me down, I was about 8 years old, and they said, "We're about to go on a long journey." And that night, they took me into the church for the first time for an evening service. And I realized then that the trip we're about to take is a really big deal, because my parents, who have never spoken about God, wanted to get the blessing of a priest. And the very next day, we went on what the Soviet government thought was a cruise of the Baltic Sea. We left with our 2 suitcases and some chicken and boiled eggs wrapped in tinfoil, and we took a train from Moscow to St. Petersburg, and from St. Petersburg to Helsinki, Finland. And we boarded a cruise ship. But when the ship pulled in to Stockholm, Sweden, we got off, and we walked to the nearest police station, and we turned ourselves in as refugees. They took us to immigrant purgatory. It was this collection of yellow cabins in the middle of nowhere on the side of a frozen river. And there were some Swedish people on vacation, ice fishing, but majority of the cabins were being used for refugees awaiting for their asylum applications to be processed. Now, this was the middle of March. There was snow on the ground. And Orthodox Easter happened to fall around that time, that year. Now, my family has never celebrated Easter, But I've seen outside of our window in Moscow how old ladies in black shawls would step out of the church around midnight, and they would walk around the church building holding candles. And this was called the Procession of the Cross. It was part of an Easter celebration, and I thought it was such a beautiful and mysterious ritual. So there we were, newly arrived in Sweden, and my parents, for some ungodly reason, probably as a last fuck you to the Soviet Union, decided to celebrate Easter. But there were no Orthodox churches around. So they invited a few friends they've made in the camp to our tiny cabin, and about 10 of them squeezed in around our little table, and somebody baked a traditional Easter bread called kulich, and somebody else painted eggs, and we feasted. And around midnight, properly drunk, everyone filed out into the snow in a freezing night and holding makeshift candles that they got God knows where. We made the procession of the cross around the cabin. And I remember feeling so rebellious. Up past my bedtime, just walking through the snow with these strangers with fire in my hand, as a Swedish neighbor watched us from his window in a cabin, just terrified. We stayed in Sweden for a year and a half. The Soviet Union fell, and many of us were sent back to make room for refugees escaping the Bosnian genocide. We never celebrated again. And I was told never to speak of our failed immigration attempt. And I didn't. I filed it away in the back of my head as something that happened to somebody else in another life. And then years later, I was living in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn, corner of 4th Avenue and 69th Street, on top of a pizzeria. It was a Friday night, and I was home alone watching a Mel Brooks movie, drinking too much wine, and when I heard the strange music coming from outside. And I ran to my window, and I look outside, and there is this crowd right in the middle of 4th Avenue, and quite tipsy. I decided I must investigate immediately. So I ran outside, and in these torn jeans and a house t-shirt, I start walking along this group of very well-dressed people who are holding candles, and they're following a pickup truck. At the back of which stands a priest in full Orthodox regalia singing into a megaphone. And as we round a corner, I see a Greek Orthodox church. And I realize that this is Good Friday, and I just walked in the procession of the cross. And as I stood to the side and I watched people file back into the church, I was hit hard by the memory of that cold March night in Sweden. And my heart was so full of love for my parents, so brave and so young, and for everyone who left their home and stepped into the unknown with nothing but a little flame of hope in their heart. And I was so hungover the next day. Christos Anesti.
Thank you so much for your story, Yulia. And next up is Rosa Guzman.
My dad's my hero. My dad was a taxi driver in Lima, Peru, South America. He could hardly make ends meet having that taxi. There was my mom and myself and 2 brothers. And one day on one of his routes, he meets an archaeologist who had come back from the US, back to Peru, because it was 1965, and it was the World's Fair. And he had come back to Peru to get some Incan artifacts for one of the exhibitions back in the US. So my dad had to take him somewhere, like an hour-long trip. And in that hour, he was just enamored with all the stuff the archaeologist said. The archaeologist's name is Nikama, very strange name, but my dad always refers to him as just plain old Nikama. but he enamored him with the idea of the U.S. He showed him House Beautiful magazines and said, all the houses look like this in the U.S. The streets are paved with gold. Everybody has a toilet with running water. And, you know, my parents were very poor, and they hardly had a little tin shack. So for a month, my dad was infatuated with the idea of this beautiful United States. And one day, the Nikama goes to my dad, well, would you like to come with me back to the U.S.? And my dad said to my mom, I'm going. And she's like, what? You know, you're gonna leave me, the 3 kids. You don't even have money. So what he did was he sold his car, which was his only asset he had, which was his taxi. And he decided that he was gonna go with Nikama back to the US. And Nikama illusioned him with the idea that he would get him a job for $50 a week. At that time, we're talking about 1965. My dad didn't even make $50 a week like in 3 months. He was illusioned with that. He told him that he would get him a place. He knew an apartment. He knew how he would, you know, he would help him out with that. And then, you know, he could save his money, work, and all this stuff, and then come and take my mom and all of us back home, back to the U.S. And my mom said he was like if he had fallen in love with this idea of going back to the U.S., of going or traveling to the U.S. And all my aunts were saying he was completely cuckoo, nuts. How could you leave your wife and kids? But my dad was determined. So March 3rd, 1965, my dad and Nikama go from Lima, Peru, Colombia, Miami, to New York. They land in JFK. So they get there, and my dad is just completely, he doesn't even remember too much because he just was completely in awe that he was in the United States. So he said that Nikama goes to my dad, we're gonna go get something to eat, and then I'm gonna, you know, we'll get everything settled. So they go to a little cafeteria. My dad doesn't even remember, but he says somewhere on Broadway. So they took a bus from JFK to Manhattan. And they go to a little cafeteria, and Nikama tells my dad, you wait right here, I'll be right back. In those days, of course, nobody had a cell phone. He was going to a phone booth. He says, I'm gonna call somebody, I'm gonna get the keys for the apartment. And so this was around, my dad says he thinks he landed about 9:30 at JFK, probably got to Broadway somewhere, probably about 11. So he says he remembers there, waiting for Nikama. And like in the cartoons, you see the clock going 11, 12, 1, 2, 5 o'clock, and Nikama still hasn't come back. The owner of the coffee shop says, excuse me, and good thing he spoke Spanish because my father didn't speak one word of English. He said, we're closing up. And my father says, I'm waiting for someone. And he said, well, he says, where are you going? And he told him his dilemma. And the owner, thank God, of this coffee shop who spoke Spanish. In those days, you'd be surprised. There weren't that many Spanish-speaking people that you could kind of talk to. And so my dad was very fortunate that this very kind store owner said to him, well, he said, do you have anyone that you can go here besides your friend who hasn't shown up? So my dad's, the only relative we had here in the United States at that time was a very distant uncle. And he had his name and address in his pocket. And he said, yeah, he says that, you know, my cousin lives in Newark, New Jersey. Now he's in New York City. This kind merchant owner brought him to Penn Station and put him on a train to Newark. He gets to Newark, and he has no idea what he's gonna do. So what he does is he could either go right or left. And he said right would have been to downtown Newark, and left, which was going more towards, if you don't know, it's more the Portuguese section of Newark, Ferry Street. So he has no idea where he's going, and he goes to the nearest bar because he figures at a bar maybe he'd see someone that might speak Spanish, because he didn't see anyone at Newark Penn Station. He goes to the bar, and divine providence, okay? He sits next to an old man, and he tells the old man his plight, And he says, the only person I know in this country is this distant cousin named Edgar Gordia. And the old man knew him. He knew him. He was like an angel. And he says, oh, I can take you to his apartment. And my dad was just, of all the places in all the world, you know, like that story, right? Of all the people, we still to the day believe he's an angel because my uncle Edgar didn't know him, didn't know this old man. And anyway, so he takes him to the apartment and he says, this is where your cousin Edgar lives. And he even knew, he said he has a sister, Vilma. And my dad said, yeah, that's it. And that's how my dad got to this country. You know, to this day, he never saw Nekama again. We don't even know if he was an archaeologist, whether it was just a whole, you know, he did mention my dad. I talked to him right before here. I said that Nekama had asked for his money. He said, listen, I'll keep it for you because when you get to the U.S., immigration and customs is going to ask you all sorts of stories. He says, I'll hold it for you. And he said that, thank God he didn't. He had it in, like, he actually had it like sewn into his pocket or something. That was the old school stuff. You sew your money in your pocket. And so otherwise he would have been completely penniless. And that's the story of my dad. He's a superhero. He came here leaving his wife and 3 kids to start a new life based on the American dream. And he's so courageous to me. My dad should be in Profiles in Courage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rosa. Up next, we have Eleanor Kostinsky.
So some people come to America for money, some for education. And my sister-in-law, she came for bananas. My sister-in-law was 22 and a daughter of a communist who never wanted to leave Soviet Union. And my brother always wanted freedom. And he wasn't going to let his family nor his dream. And so my brother tried to persuade her with freedom, education, opportunities. But the winning argument were bananas all you can eat. And so we came to America. In the beginning, we got very little government money, and it wasn't enough, and we were on a strict budget. The budget was 1 banana a day. Obviously, my sister-in-law felt cheated. She left her parents for bananas, and now she can only have 1. So we felt very bad and gave out our bananas. But after some time, it didn't feel fair. And we decided it was going to be a little competition. We also brought backgammon set with us. And every night we played a game or 2 of backgammon. And whoever wins gets to eat banana. Well, needless to say, some people are more creative than others and learn to cheat well. And there was banana drama. My brother could not see his wife suffer so much, and he needed to make more money. And so he shared a secret that back in Kiev, he invested in art. He sold his car, and for all the money, he bought 3 pieces of an up-and-coming artist who was going to be the new Marc Chagall. He had an English teacher who was an artist himself and an art collector, and he told him about this artist, and my brother invested. And so, one day, my brother and I, went to an art gallery and tried to sell the painting. Now, the painting was a scene from Red Riding Hood. It had a wolf with an open jaw and illuminated white teeth and the bright red color of Red Riding Hood. And the contrast between black and white was so colorful, so intense, so fierce and magnificent. And actually it symbolized the mirrored Soviet war against America, evil against the good. The art director looked at the painting, and we were trying in our broken English to persuade him to buy it. We were saying, look, look, look. And he was saying, I like, but. And after but, we couldn't understand a thing. But one thing was clear, he wasn't going to purchase. But we were not in a hurry. You know, Marc Chagall didn't become famous overnight, and this guy also we still had time. So we came home and put the painting on a wall. We were living in a small immigrant apartment with, you know, very bland walls. So we needed to have some color. And so until one day, when my brother's daughter woke up at night and looked at the wolf who was coming out alive from the painting, I was trying to eat her alive. And she cried and had night terrors. And of course, we had to take it out and put it in a closet and wait for better times. But meanwhile, it was a very hot summer in Philadelphia. It was over 100 degrees, and our Soviet bodies were not made for this heat. We didn't have AC, but a few blocks down the road was ShopRite, and it had good AC. And so we had to chill. We went to chill a few times a day to ShopRite. That's how I learned the word chill. And we were chilling in ShopRite, and meanwhile, we needed to practice our English with native speakers. So my brother and I would approach people and ask them questions. And Americans in Philadelphia, not like New Yorkers, they are very nice and friendly. And oftentimes, they were very happy to engage in conversation with us. We got to practice our English, we chilled. Until one day, we went to supermarket and we came to this guy, and my brother said, "Excuse me, where is ice cream?" And the man said, "Little." And my brother's like, "Did you get it?" And I said, "No." And I said again, "Excuse me, where can we find ice cream?" And again, I didn't understand. And the third time, my brother asked, the man looked at him and said, "Fuck you!" Now, I was studying classical English. I didn't know that word, but I knew we have to let him go. And I said, "Thank you." Now, my brother kicked my ass. And now he really kicked my ass because, you know, he knew the word and I didn't, but he didn't know I didn't. And so the man called the management. And management, you know, was very surprised to see domestic drama. And as a result of this domestic drama, and we couldn't explain what particularly this, you know, kicking ass was, we were restricted from going to that ShopRite ever again. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor. And I have air conditioning and a backgammon board, so I'll bet as many bananas as you want. I'm pretty good. Next up is Sarah Jin.
My father had always commandeered Thanksgiving. Self-appointed head pilgrim and native, he would banish my grandmother and mother from the kitchen. Plan, shop, prep, cook, and clean from beginning to end. It was his jam, his favorite American holiday. He took it upon himself to single-handedly perpetuate Thanksgiving at our house. In reality, the holiday was a series of epic disasters. Every year, one after the other. Picture medieval battle scenes straight out of a Roald Dahl children's book. Daddy and the undignified veg. Great vats of boiling water and hulking boulders of potatoes ready to be catapulted, an armory of celery sticks and carrots the size of mini lightsabers lying at the ready. And don't forget the turkey. We've had it rubbed with whiskey and soy sauce. Don't ask. He's a bartender. Burned, undercooked, oftentimes both. Blackened skin outside, pink flesh ooze inside. His most successful foray featured a butterball turkey with its own packet of chemicals and juices packed inside. So how can you burn it, right? He had to call the Butterball hotline for help. But no one speaks of it for fear that it might inspire him to try again. So you see, ironically, Thanksgiving often left us hungry. You have to understand my father's love for the holiday. He loved the opportunity to gather his family together and fill our bellies. This simple act of feeding us meant everything to him. As a child, he saw his country invaded and his education curtailed at 6th grade. A few years later, China was ripped apart by civil war. Images from that period in his life are forever seared into his memory. He saw children dying on the roadside because they did not have enough to eat, their legs swollen from malnutrition. His father couldn't find work. His younger brother and sister often went hungry, and his mother was pregnant with another baby on the way. That was my father's reality. At age 17, when most people are sent off to college, he was sent overseas by his grandfather to find work and send money back to feed his family. The day after his ship set sail for the United States in November of 1949, the Red Army took over his province, one of the last nationalist strongholds. My father had escaped the turmoil preceding the Cultural Revolution, but the images of children starving on the roadside always remained with him. His first Thanksgiving in America, he had just arrived in California, and his family was halfway around the world, penniless and alone. He spoke not one word of English. So you see, Thanksgiving holds special meaning for my dad. He loved the idea of doing what all Americans were doing that day. It meant he too was American. You see, my father was a dreamer before the term had been coined. He had come to the United States with false papers during a period of restricted immigration, a period when Chinese were unjustly targeted and specifically excluded. His grandfather was desperate to ensure the survival of his family. So he purchased false papers through a friend, and my father was sent to the United States, posing as the son to this man. History textbooks called him a paper son. Others might call him an illegal immigrant. For 25 years, he lived under a false name, and all 4 of his children, myself included, were born under that name. In 1974, the United States granted my father amnesty. He was officially forgiven, and we were able to reclaim our family name. He had finally found a path to citizenship. We never spoke of this outside the house. Our secret meant certain danger. The implications were clear. Even later, after he had become a citizen, we never shared because people didn't usually wait to hear the particulars, and because we were made to feel ashamed of the difficult choices my father had had to make. To avoid the instant and automatic judgment, we learned to be silent about this part of our history. We've carried that shame with us for decades, and we've kept this family secret well past its expiration date. I'm not afraid anymore, and I realize that I didn't need to feel shame then. At 17, my father did what he had to do to help his family survive. His story is not unique. Today, my father's 93 years old. My entire family and I wholeheartedly celebrate his favorite holiday. Thanksgiving provides us with a moment to reflect and express our gratitude. First, we make sure he does none of the cooking. We are grateful for that. Second, we give thanks to America for having the wisdom and generosity to forgive and accept, and for adopting him 76 years ago. We too forgive and accept. His history is woven into the fabric of this United States. He belongs. We belong.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah. Our next storyteller is Wilhelm Kuhn.
Thank you. I'm Will from Paris. Even though my mom lives in Chablis in Burgundy, it's a great town. So the origin story of how I got to move to this great country is one that I can only describe as fateful. It all goes back to one night that started out like innocent and turned into a frightening, bizarre, very eventful evening. So in November 2015, I had just moved back from England, where I had studied filmmaking at the London Film School for 3 years. I was very happy to be back in my hometown and ready to start my professional life. And then one day, one of my friends called Stephanie, an American student from the London Film School that I had met there, told me that she was coming to Paris to visit and that we should hang out and that I should bring my friends. And I said, yeah, sure. And she also said that she was bringing a friend along, someone from America like her called Blair. And I was very much intrigued because it was mid-November 2015, and I was wondering what kind of American young woman would come to Paris in mid-November 2015. I don't know if you remember what happened then. The terrorist attacks, and they still hadn't caught all of the terrorists, and the city was on the verge of a lockdown, and everybody thought it would happen again at any point. Blair's mom, Michelle, was absolutely horrified at the prospect of her daughter going to Paris. She had called her saying, Blair, you're crazy. You can't go to Paris right now. And Blair said, Mom, if I don't go, the terrorists win. Yeah, you laugh, but Michelle did not find it funny at all. She even called her son Matt and said, Matt, I know you don't care about much, but you have to convince your sister not to go. It is important. And then he said, well, Mom, if she doesn't listen to you, she's not going to listen to me. Matt, you have to try. Okay, so he called her, he tried, and he got the exact same answer, which he did find very funny. And he said, oh, okay, well, I can tell by my tried. Okay, goodbye, have a good trip. And off she went. So Blair and Stephanie were now in Paris 3 days after the terrorist attacks, and we were basically hanging out with them. I introduced them to, my best Parisian friends, and we went to bars, and I was very intrigued by Blair. She was very smart, very optimistic, and very funny as well. So the night went on, and we bar hopped, we had beer, we had wine, we had liquor. Stephanie, even much more than everybody else, we just didn't notice. We also didn't know, but she was on medication. She was on medication, and we learned that night that it actually does not always mix well with alcohol. So we got to like the third and last bar of the evening, and basically while we were settling and finding like a nice table to have like our last beers at, Stephanie went downstairs to the bathroom and stayed there for a while. In the meantime, Blair revealed her best hidden secret and talent, foosball. So that bar had awesome foosball tables, and she kicked all of our asses, including mine. So much for French supremacy at soccer. So while we were playing foosball, Blair got like a phone call on her iPhone, and that was from a French number. So that was very surprising. She didn't know anybody who was French. She didn't have any French friend until then. And she also did not speak a word of French. She still doesn't, but she's working on it very actively. Love you, sweetie. And then she picked up the phone, and then a woman, French woman, was on the phone saying, your friend is downstairs. What? Yeah, your friend is passed out in the bathroom. I called you because you're the last number on her phone. So we rushed to the bathroom and found Stephanie, who was completely passed out on the floor, did not move. We could not wake her up. We could not move her. We could not carry her. She just wasn't moving. So the woman said, oh, it's okay. I just called an ambulance. And Blair started freaking out. Like, she told me the most American thing I ever heard. Oh my God, she can't afford an ambulance. She's a broke student. And I said, well, it's okay. It's free here. And she did not believe me, but it was too late. Like, the paramedics were already down, walking down the stairs, picking up Stephanie and said, we're taking her to the hospital. You have to come with us. And Stephanie was, of course, Blair's only translator in France. So she was in a country having to go to a foreign hospital with people she couldn't talk to. But I said, it's fine. I'm going to come with you. We're going to go to the ambulance and take Stephanie to the hospital. It's okay. It was not my first time picking up a drunk friend in the street of Paris. To an ambulance, to a French hospital. Now, they took her to that emergency room near Gare du Nord. It's a train station in the north of Paris, arguably the worst ER in France, full of like drug addict, gunshot, wounded criminal. It's absolutely horrible. So they took Stephanie away and they said she'll be fine. So we just waited in the middle of all these people, having nothing to do. Just Blair said, well, I'm very grateful that you came with me, and I wish the night had come, had a different ending. We had been flirting together for the whole night, and we had like 2 or 3 hours to kill in that waiting room at the ER. So what did we do? We started making out. Yeah, that's how we passed the time. 2 hours later, Stephanie woke up, had no recollection of what happened, was wondering what she was doing here, but she woke up in time so that Blair and her and she could just go back to their Airbnb, check out, and get to the train back to London. And Blair and I exchanged like our messenger or our Facebook, and then a few hours later, Blair sent me a message saying, well, thank you for saving our lives. And I said, well, you're welcome. And then we started discussing about, other stuff, like, what you don't do in your life when you're not saving your friends in the street of Paris. And, here you go. The rest is history. 1 month later, she invited me to visit New York. I said, okay. And we started that long distance thing. And 1 year later, we filed for a visa so she could import me here. And it has become, indeed, my favorite story to tell. Now, I know it's a very selfish thing to say, but I am forever grateful to our friend Stephanie for getting sick that night, that fateful night, giving us the chance to show the best version of myself, even though I'm a Parisian, to meet my soulmate, and to eventually get to call New Jersey my home. Thank you.
That was fantastic. I think we also need to give a round of applause to Blair. Our next storyteller is Gloria Lamort.
When I was a little girl, I was in a mad rush to grow up. That adult world looked so good on TV. Channel 5 was playing That Girl with Marla Thomas on reruns. I wanted to be that girl. I wanted to be liberated Anne Marie walking on the streets of New York City, looking up at buildings, spinning and prancing through Central Park like it's nobody's business. 5th grade was my do or die year, but growing up wasn't happening fast enough, so I did what I could to speed things up. One day after school, I locked myself in the bathroom, grabbed my mom's tweezers, and started plucking away at my black, bushy Latina eyebrows. Ouch, ouch, ouch! Every hair pulled brought me closer. I loved every pinch. What was left were two itty-bitty arches around my baby eyes. Bangs hid them perfectly in the house. Outside, a bobby pin revealed my maturity. At the time, my parents, two sisters, and I were recent immigrants from Colombia. My parents worked long hours at factory jobs. So my sister and I pretty much ran free on the block with friends. One day, I'm rushing out of the house to play kickball. My dad's coming in from work, dead tired. Hola, papi. Hola, mi. And he froze mid-mija. He stared at me, and he took a real good look for a real long time. I realized he's looking at my new fancy eyebrows. And just like that, patted me on the head, and he said, ay, pobrecita. Whatever, Dad. I was out the door. See, my obsession with being big and grown wasn't just something I wanted badly, but by default, I was the big girl of the house. It happened the second that plane landed at JFK. Work consumed my parents. So I suddenly found myself cooking for my entire family, and I'm talking real food. Carne asada, frijoles, maduros. I became my parents' translator, filling out their forms at motor vehicles, giving them bad news at the doctor's office. I even represented myself at parent-teacher night, interpreting to my father what a super-duper student I was. This responsibility would have fallen on my sister, Marta. She's 6 years older, but Marta has autism, and at the time, suffered from severe epileptic seizures. Then there was my younger sister, Estella, but you know, she was the baby. So this middle spot was all mine, and I loved it. I grew to relish this huge role I played in my family. My parents were grateful and always sure to let me know my worth. My eyebrow secret didn't last for long. By the weekend, my mother busted me. Mija, me vas a matar. Oscar, that's my dad. ¿Sí la ves? Remember that chance encounter with my father? He thought I actually singed my eyebrows making dinner, and he felt bad for me. They were pissed, but I never stopped teasing. Then after that, one day on my way home from school, I'm walking, and what do I feel on my face? Bumpy things, a few. Yup, pimples. Could it be puberty, finally? Hell yeah, my period was next for sure. Nothing more grown than that. I love America. I ran home, locked myself in the bathroom again, and marveled at my pimple face. It looked so cute with my fancy eyebrows. It was happening. By the end of the night, my face was covered in a blistery rash and an itch you can't imagine. I had the chicken pox. What followed were days of isolation, fever, and boredom. No kickball, no hide and seek, and my friends started playing spin the bottle without me. But bedtime was the hardest because I was separated from my sisters to protect them. What I remember most about those nights was falling asleep to The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. Johnny put me to bed. I was still a child and very much afraid of the dark. One of those nights, Johnny had on a guest. I don't remember who she was, but I never forgot her. She sat on that famous couch and went on to tell a story. She looked up, she had a strong voice, and she spoke to me. I don't remember what she said, but she busted open the world for me, a big world I was tripping over to be a part of. All I remember is 10-year-old me watching and listening to her tell her story, and me saying that. I want to be that girl when I grow up. Thank you.
All right, everyone, that was our last scheduled storyteller, but before we go to judging, we do want to put it out to the crowd. If anyone's feeling a little saucy and wants to come up here and tell a story, now is your time. Any hands in the audience? Going once? Oh, there's a hand. Come on up. Welcome. Just tell us your name before you tell your story. Mohammed.
All right. Good evening, everybody, or bonsoir, as we've been re-energized by our French-speaking folks from Paris here. As I mentioned, my name is Mohamed Diallo. I am originally from Guinea, and usually when I say Guinea, people ask me, is it Papua New Guinea or Guinea-Bissau or Equatorial Guinea? But I just tell them Guinea. So we speak French there. It's hard to follow the amazing speakers who have spoken here, but I'll just try to share some insights into what's been my journey, but I'll start with my biggest heroes. That is first my mother and also my dad. So my father was a shepherd and my mom a settler. Being born in Guinea, dad being an immigrant himself in Guinea, I was a translator between mom and dad because mom came from one of the most predominant ethnic groups and my father the second most prominent ethnic groups. Therefore, they decided to have a son to be their translator. So anytime that I would address my mother, she would tell me to speak to her in my father's language while she responds to me in her language. So my father would do the same thing. That's how they taught me to speak their languages. So I grew up speaking Mandingo, which is my mother's language, and Fulani, my father's language, right? So, and learned French when I was in school. When I turned 11, I asked my father, and my mother was present. I said, well, how did you guys communicate before I was born? Because, because this is very, very, intriguing. It turned out that they had set me up exactly so that I could learn their languages and improve upon theirs too, but it helped me out as I wandered out into my life. So there are two gifts that my mother shared with me. It was a soccer ball and then also a pen. So with the two, the symbolism behind them was so significant. I only realized that a few years down the road. So when I was 17, Mom passed away. And she still lives with me here in spirit and memory. But the message behind the soccer ball was that I was a late speaker. I was diagnosed with certain stuttering issues when I was younger. So she thought that I would never be able to speak. And then with the soccer ball, what it allowed me to do was that anytime I would go into the field, I'd play with friends, folks from different backgrounds, linguistic, cultural backgrounds, and different origins. So I learned to speak as I communicate with folks on the soccer field, but also learn the languages. The pen came when I realized that my father had understood that I'm going to law school, because when I asked him about that question of language-related, trick, he said, "You're going to law school one day." So I went to law school, and upon graduating law school in Guinea, traveled to the US. I couldn't speak English. I only spoke French, Fulani, Mandingos, and 6 other languages because they had programmed my brain for that, right? You could only... So I got into the midst of the blaze, right? And I was like, okay, it's my time now to try to navigate through a world where I don't not only understand the language, but also don't understand necessarily the culture, although I was introduced a little bit with some foreign visitors who would go to Guinea and I would host there. So when I got to New York, I was going to Brooklyn, and instead of taking the B train, I hopped onto the D train, and that went up to the Bronx, and it was express. So, and I got to my appointment a little late, and the teacher was like, "Mohammed, you're very late." I said, "Thank you, monsieur." So, but I didn't know what he meant. It was later on that a friend of mine explained it to me. So to add some cherry to this icing, or icing to the cherry, I took a car and decided to drive from New York to California, which is wild. I said, why not? I crossed the Atlantic Ocean from Guinea to the US, then I might as well go to the Pacific Ocean. So when I drove all the way to Texas, someone saw me, and the person said, and with my hat, the person asked, oh, what's your name? I said, Diallo. He asked, Pablo? I said, sí. So, yes, and decided to learn Spanish because the food was so great. And then in California, Southern California, we have Taco Tuesdays. I put my hat on and then just entered big restaurant and line up. I say, hola, ¿cómo estás? Yo soy de Guinea. Necesito taco. Oh, sí, primo, gracias. Aquí, vas a tener eso. ¿Dónde eres? ¿Dónde habla español? Dice, yo aprendí español aquí porque me gustan las comidas español y me gustan las comunidades español también, pero es como mi familia. And then we tienes taco aquí, préndelo. So I flew back from California and I got here yesterday. I checked in to ask about courses here, and I was told that there is a storytelling night. A storytelling night. I was like, well, look, I'm not going to say add my name to it, but you could put it right at the bottom or just come over and observe, and if I feel like it, I'll go about it. Right, so, and I saw Mom yesterday in my dream. She told me she's all right and that it's okay to just share this story with you. So I'm glad to be here.
Great job, and thank you for letting everyone know we stacked the deck here a little bit. All right, so we're gonna bring our judges upstairs to deliberate, and in the meantime, you can raise the stakes here by getting another drink. I promise it helps. So, the judges, let's go. All right, so our judge, Raul, is going to announce third place.
So first of all, I want to say this was very difficult to decide how to rank these because there were so many great things in just about every story and performance. By round of applause, who's leaving here today really inspired from listening to these journeys of immigration? Well, I can say that the three of us are also leaving with lots of inspiration from all of these immigration stories. And I think that's really, outside of the prizes we're about to give out, that is really the true prize that we're all getting tonight, whether you came up here or not. So without further ado, for the third place tonight, we've chosen a storyteller that really dazzled us and had us at the edge of our seats, who also painted really an epic movie in 6 minutes that carried us across different borders. And really an inspirational story, and that is Yulia. So, Yulia, come on up. Is she still here? Oh, yeah, come on. So, congratulations. Okay.
All right. Yulia, hang out up here. We're going to take a group shot at the end, and Amber is going to announce second place.
Yes, well, I do want to echo what Raul said. Montclair Film, you need like 6 more of these tote bags, write a grant for it or something, because everyone deserved one. But for a story that really stole our hearts, certainly my heart, by being as surprising and bizarre and sort of unexpected as the immigrant experience itself can be, for the wolf painting, for the bananas, Eleanor, this is for you.
Kaylee will announce the grand prize winner.
I just want to reiterate, thank you everybody for coming. Thank you for telling your stories. As an immigrant myself, I found myself missing my mom and dad at home, but it was really inspiring to listen to. Everybody was funny, witty, inspiring. Some had us in tears, some had us giggling. So thank you very much for that. Our first place, in terms of storytelling, just told a clear beginning, middle, and end story. Really took us on a journey, a long journey that we've, as immigrants, have experienced. But just something that really stuck to me as well. It was a good message, made me feel like really at home, even in this foreign country. And that person is Sarah Jin. Congratulations.
And let's get, everybody to the front here, all of our winners and judges, and then we'll have all the storytellers come up after. All right, now let's get no judges, yep. All right, all the storytellers, let's get every storyteller up on deck. All right, well, let's get all the storytellers up. Everybody. All right, are we missing any storytellers here? We got everybody? 1, 2, 3, 8, 9. There we go. All right, let's get the big group shot. Awesome. All right, I think there's still some pictures going on. Storytellers and the judges. Thank you so much to all of our storytellers and for everyone for coming out. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.